We're on.
Good afternoon and welcome to the third ConeX portal LinkedIn live session. Our special guest today is Peter Francis of MATL Limited and his fellow director Matthew, both of who are proud winners of the Best Industrial Process Improvement Consultancy. We're also joined by Lee from MCNC, Yinch from Playco, and of course we have the inimitable Mr. Adam Payne from Factory IQ at the helm. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, Peter, we know manufacturers desperately want to improve and adapt, but maybe feel that wholesale change is too much. Do you think they're using their people and equipment to their full potential?
Well, actually, Angela, I think that they don't realise that they have a very expansive asset within their own people in a lot of cases, and so very definitely they're underutilising them, but they're also not really getting to understand what those people can do. And I think one of the things we've certainly come across in the last few years is that businesses need to make those small changes, and they don't know where to turn to, and they don't realize that actually what they've got in-house is a very, very valuable resource. So that's one of the reasons why we've actually tried to tap into that and help those companies to move forward and plan what they're going to do. So our focus really is to sort of help small businesses, small manufacturers, to identify what improvements they need and what problems they may have, so we can actually generate a workable plan around that, and fitting around the business itself. It takes people as the starting point of their expertise. So we're looking at those people who have been in there for some time, but they know the business inside out. They don't necessarily know the strategy, but they really do have a handle on what isn't going right, what could they do about it, but they just don't necessarily capture it to pass that on and embed it into the company. So we're actually blending the existing knowledge of those people, capturing the existing skills that they have, getting ideas together, looking at the people's potential and the potential of the equipment, and then bringing that together with our own industry expertise, so we can generate a workable plan for the company so it can move forward in its own right, rather than looking at trying to build in a framework which isn't necessarily something of their own making. And we often don't actually see equipment to its full potential. I mean, you take, for example, easy one, Microsoft Excel. How many people know absolutely everything there is that's available in Excel? I mean, very, very few people. I'm sure Yinch, you probably really understand that. But there's so many things that are embedded in there that can make people's lives a lot easier. And the same applies to a lot of other equipment, software, processes, which will actually simplify. And you've already bought it. So the main focus we have is, let's get in there and help people to use what they've got first before they start investing in something else. And then you build a plan where you know exactly where your investment needs to be.
It can be the same approach with the staff, because you're already paying the staff to be there. Ask them, involve them, find out what they think, what they really know. They may just be sat operating a machine as far as your supervisors are concerned, but they've been doing that for 10 years. They know that machine inside out. They know how to fix it, they know how to tweak it. Ask them what you think they could be doing differently to make the whole process better. You'll be amazed what they know, but no one ever asked them.
I guess it's a training as well will come into that, won't it? You know, because, you know, Peter, you mentioned about spreadsheets, and I think we all sort of stumble along with basic spreadsheet knowledge. But if you've got somebody who's needing to use spreadsheets as part of their daily routine, having that training to use that spreadsheet better and utilise it far more effectively, I guess you see quite a lot of that, really.
Yeah, and to some extent, if you get someone who needs, take the example of the spreadsheet, who needs to use spreadsheets on a regular basis, giving them that training means that they're able to help other people in the company to be able to overcome maybe smaller problems, and they actually develop their own level of expertise. and it sort of elevates them in their own esteem, but it also identifies them as a sort of a key function within that business. So I think it's, the training is certainly important, but it also gives that level of self-respect that people can then share their knowledge. And I think as Matthew's already mentioned, people know an awful lot about what they're already doing, but being given that the permission to actually share it with people without it becoming a sort of hierarchical thing really does make a big difference to people's well-being in a company.
Do you think as well that some businesses, I know some people with computers, they struggle with computers because they're afraid to push it too far in case they break it. Do you think that's a similar thing with manufacturers and their equipment and their machinery, is that they don't push it and they don't think, well, what more could we do with this?
I would say that most businesses have got processes, the manufacturing process and the production schedule, and they have that task to complete. So that's what they're looking at. They're not looking at deviating away from how can we do this differently, how can we do it better. It's just getting it from A to B, and they aren't always being encouraged to actually think outside that box. If we actually give them that permission to say, what can we do with this? Have you found something? They will do a little bit of play, and they'll find better ways much more easily than someone coming in from outside or even the management, because they know that intimately. So I think people are afraid to actually to push it, but then if they're told that yes, that's fine, just don't disrupt the production too much, they'll find something clever.
There's got to be a culture where people are allowed to try these things, take small risks for the benefit of what's going on. If you come from a culture where the manager's saying, that's your job, just do that and nothing else, you're going to sit there and just carry on doing that job. Whereas if you're, that's your job, but what else can we do to make it better? You're going to put some time into thinking about what you can do and risk putting some ideas forward. But if you're in an environment where those ideas always get shot down, you're only going to make a few suggestions, then you're going to give up. So it's got to come. The culture's got to be right at the top to accept the change and encourage the change.
You've hit the nail on the head there, Matt. Culture is key to everything. 100%. It's the old analogy, especially in smaller companies and SMEs, where you're not MCNC. We're a subcontract manufacturer. We don't have a product, so we can make anything from a one-off to 10,000s off. So it's all about developing a safe process and then being able to push the boundaries. It depends on the risk. So a lot of people are afraid of taking that risk, not necessarily of pushing boundaries, but it's the risk element, especially if you've got a piece of material that costs thousands and tooling that costs thousands. You don't want to push it. You don't want to break it. You don't want to scrap it. So you would rather take twice as long as you could because of the fear of risk. So it's all about trying to change that culture and come up with suggestions to simply ask the questions, even if it's, what do you think if I do A, because I think that will equal B, whatever that might be. But the first step is getting them and instilling confidence to be able to ask that question. That will then progress onto them to weigh up the risk themselves and think, well, I've done this before. It's not going to be a problem. I'm going to do B.
When you first meet a potential client or manufacturer, you can soon tell from those first early conversations if the culture in their business is going to be receptive to these sort of changes, or if they're doing it because they think they should do it, not because they know they need to do it or they want to do it.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I did something on LinkedIn about change a couple of years ago now, and it was the biggest hurdle that we had to overcome was culture. And unless you get everybody on board, sorry, I've got a stinker of a cold. Unless you get everybody on board to embrace the change, and you can only do that by changing the culture and making it a team effort. And management have to have they also have to embrace the change and being able to take it on the chin that what their way is not necessarily the best way, because in the workforce you've got the old beach ball, haven't you? The management can only a lot of the time see half of it, maybe 3/4 of it if they're a really good manager. It's not very often that you get somebody sitting on top and looking down at the complete sphere, but then you still can't see what's going on underneath. So yeah, you need those opinions of everybody, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and be prepared to listen.
Some of what you're saying there, Lee, is actually very much down to the level of trust that people will have in their own team, and that goes in both directions. One is that the management or the leadership will actually trust people to actually carry out their jobs, and if they don't carry them out in the way they need to, they should stand up and be accounted for, but not necessarily on a punishment. But vice versa, the people who are actually in the production team need to trust that the management is supporting them, and there is that free exchange. That way, the management doesn't need to know absolutely everything that's going on because it's all been delegated down. But we have a lot of companies which have, especially the small companies, which have grown up out of a very small 2, 3, 4-man business. They've developed larger, and that pain of getting that delegation moved to other people is something that is difficult to overcome. And I think a lot of companies struggle with that, don't they?
Especially family owned, owner managed, because they want to keep control because it's their family and their business.
I completely agree. 100%. Sounds like you're describing us.
Yeah, there is a mixture. I mean, when we look around, you know, if we take from a lean aspect of when we look at manning, and I don't know whether anybody has seen the chart. If we take a rectangle, and we have across the bottom, we have our associates, we have the middle management, and then we have our executive team as a band going across. And then between that band diagonally running up is continuous improvement cutting across all 3 levels. Now, when we're big and we've got this executive team, we can work, and there's a standard work that we go into that and it cuts across it. But as an SME and as a subcontractor, the family owned, the MD, might also be working at an associate level as well. And there's that cross between. So as we draw in more complexity, as we get more people in, processes begin to creep, because we get these other people that are coming in and processes. That person goes off and does another role, but he or she might not relinquish everything within the role. They keep some of it here because it's just the way the business is at the minute. And this is where this waste comes into the business and starts driving a lot of delay and process and error and all of the normal waste that we do. And that's the classic is we need to get rid of that. Now, the side for me, one of the questions I was going to ask you was, we concentrate on manufacturing and we look at the man and machine, and I hate using the word man, so person, man, woman, and machine integration. And we want those processes as slick as possible. But what we sometimes forget are the admin processes outside of the manufacturing area. And they're as equal to the improvement within a business, if not more, than the manufacturing processes. Because the manufacturing processes, we tend to be quite detailed in and really drawn into it. And we forget all about the admin side, invoices, purchasing, logistics, and things like that. And they begin to really creep. So there's also an opportunity elsewhere. So you've got to look at this from a real business real business synergy and bring it together. And I think people have hit the nail on the head. Communication, and listen. Yeah.
Can I just sort of just tap one of those bits back? You're talking about the administrative processes. I think if you've got a manufacturing business, the important part is actually manufacturing things or providing that service, because otherwise the administration can't run on its own. So the manufacturing processes need to be superior, as it were. They have to be the lead. I do agree with you that there are processes in the administrative side, but they tend not to be dynamic, in that once you've actually set it up, it's going to continue as part of the business structure. and then if you make a change to the business structure, then you would adapt the admin processes. Whereas the manufacturing processes could easily change relatively quickly. So they do have to work hand in hand. But I think the danger is that some companies will set out admin processes because they're easy to define. They can see it happens day in, day out. So therefore they set those out. But the processes which involve machinery and people, they tend not to define because it's going to have to change again. And I think that's where you lose. There's a loss of communication between the two streams within the company.
Now that's interesting.
Each other.
Now that's interesting, Peter, because I would have said the opposite.
Really,
what I see is that you from a manufacturing side, if you get into this continuous improvement, and generally what we do is we're finding ways of working better within manufacturing. Whereas admin processes, we don't look at it. We're not interested in it. So we bring in SAP, let's say. So we bring in an MRP system. And what we do within the MRP system is, because people aren't trained or aren't done it properly, because we spoke around training, is they get the information and take that out and put it into Excel. And then we manipulate it into Excel, and then we drop it back into SAP. So our process has just crept, or lead time has just crept, or over processing has just crept. And this is where some of this so when we say admin, I mean, from a manufacturing point of view, you can't have an operational excellence in manufacturing without having operations in logistics.
True.
Virtually impossible, because that logistical process needs to happen as well. So I see both, to be fair, from what the work I deal with. Manufacturing, it tends to be, and it may just be the clientele that I'm with, tend to have a good awareness of what there is. Don't get me wrong, still needs improvement, and there still needs, because there's this hidden factory that we see in there, 40%, 50% utilization is well known. But the admin is almost as equally as big as well, and some of the core processes around it. So when I look at things, is we have OEE within the manufacturing overall equipment effectiveness that takes into account all of the way we process, the way we work, availability, quality. We also have OLE, so overall logistics effectiveness. We also have the supply chain one, and those three together create the business one. And we often miss the other two. We concentrate on the factory and miss the other two. So I see it from both sides.
Would you agree that the communication between the two systems doesn't necessarily match up? So when you expect certain things to happen within the administrative side, you expect certain things to happen in the production process, but because they're not actually communicating all the way through, it's almost like it magically appears.
Yeah, I think we have loads of variables. So one of the things, Keith, we've had a discussion on here before now, I think, around is what we tend to do is, if we've got a good engineer, we've got a good manufacturer, we've got a good operator, we shift them into being a team leader or shift them into being a production manager. What we don't do is train them. So they now become this accidental manager. And there is a different skill set as it goes up. There are different manager levels, and we need to train that in. So that gets missed. So therefore, the miscommunication starts coming in, because we haven't trained the people to do it. So yeah, absolutely, totally agree with you on it, because there is this miscommunication. And as the business grows, we get the differences because of the way we go from the family running down at the associate level and everything in between. And as it grows, we aren't making these processes or getting these processes right, so things begin to slip. And it is for me communication, training. Listen, give it. It's a whole host of different cogs that go into it, but process is behind a lot of it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of that. You were talking about the accidental manager. People in those positions don't want to be doing that, do they? They're looking to actually continue, but maybe at a higher level, to sort of continue on their engineering or technician. They want to carry on doing that, but maybe mentor and support people on those skills. So there's
a very good book from software engineering called The Mythical Man Month, where somebody traced that exact pathway of very effective programmers working in large companies. This was over like 40 or 50 years of research, where they would be very good programmers. And because of the way the organization was structured, if you were a good programmer, you got promoted to manager. So so the team would lose its best programmer and acquire an accidental manager, and they were generally terrible managers. And this happened for decades. And he worked on some really big projects. And he made a proposal, which was to not promote people who are effective, but to actually take away from them the things which was like the housekeeping stuff. And the model he used was called a surgical team. When a surgeon is very good, they just do the surgery, and then you add people around them to take away the noise activities. And so I can absolutely see that the kind of accidental manager thing is a double whammy, because you lose a production asset and you gain a slightly like undercooked manager asset. And it's very natural progression. And the company that he saw this on was IBM. Huge company. They know how to get big. They know how to tap the markets. But when there is a bit of craft to the work, then promoting the most effective people so they don't do any of the work is a habit that doesn't tend to yield very good results.
With sort of when we're talking about business change and making improvements, people struggle to actually look for those changes because that's not necessarily their role. So as they're sort of continuing in the production environment, in the management, in the administration, they will sort of still focus on that track and not look sideways at what could change. But then, do you need to have people with that sort of skill set actually within the company when it's a relatively small one? I can appreciate when you've got you will actually have maybe a project team who can execute major changes when you've got a larger corporate, but in a small company, probably not worth it. But yeah, where do you turn if you find there is an issue that you don't know how to solve?
I think going back to Adam's issue about taking data in out of SAP and that sort of stuff, I think a lot of the responsibility also comes down to people selling the systems. They overpromise and underdeliver. So you end up having a system that's running the business, not helping for the business. It is the business having to run to work in the way that SAP or other MRP systems want it to, whereas the business has been running in this perfect way for 50 years. Along comes a bit of software that hasn't quite done what was being promised. So you start changing everything you do internally to make it work with the software. So you're now putting all sorts of barriers and chains in place that the business doesn't need and doesn't want just to make a system work. So in that case, you've got the wrong system in place.
I think that's a really good point, Matthew. And I think, it goes back to what you and Peter were saying earlier, is that you need to look at what you've got first and make that better before bringing in a new system or new software, because then you can tailor it to what you're doing at your best. If you've utilized your people to their full ability, if you've utilized your equipment to the full ability, then bring in something that complements that.
You have to. The thing for me is from a process point of view, we need to have our processes written down. And that's regarding whether you're getting a positive or a negative result. They need to be written down, even if it's negative, because what you need to be able to do is to make the change. And if the change doesn't work, to revert back to something that you're controlling. So we're controlled all the time. It's plan, do, check, act cycle, as we all know, or the standardize, do, check, act first off, and then plan, do, check, act. So we standardize it first, even if it is shit. We standardize it, but we make it better. But we've got something always to work back from, a data.
You can always go back to your baseline, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
And how many times have we seen people on when they're right? Maybe again in software, in my case, where I've seen people make changes and something was working, they made a tweak, and suddenly it all goes to pot. And they didn't actually take a backup to say, right, we know where we were, that worked, wind back. And they're not necessarily brave enough to do it either. But I have seen some rather dangerous approaches where someone nearly got a face full of gas when they shouldn't have done.
So I think one of the things that we always face with is that change is always a challenge. I think it's almost psychologically, emotionally a challenge, separately from the operational side of it. And one of the untapped capabilities is your network, the people because when you need an organization to face a challenging change, then you need trust, which you've all said, and you can try to build trust from scratch. But if you have existing relationships, I think that's an enormous starting point. And so if one of the untapped capabilities is people or building relationships with people before you need to ask them to do something, because when you need to ask to do something, it's scary. I think it's worth saying that it is daunting to them, and they need to trust the people telling them. And somebody who's just an outsider who's just interested in selling one thing says, you definitely want to buy this one thing I'm selling you if this will definitely work. And so one of the things that my company has tried to do is to be very aware of a broad range and spectrum of tools, so that when we offer something to people, we can offer them a range of capabilities. And the third thing is to be able to say, when you understand, spend time listening and profiling what your problem is, to be able to walk away, to say, actually, now that I understand your problem, I can't help you, and say, and that, and you have to be able to walk away. And that is a benefit to both parties.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that takes a lot of courage.
It certainly does.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily close off a relationship, because if you are in that position where you say, I understand your problem, I can't deal with it, you quite often know someone else who could possibly help them, and that's not abandoning them. That's just helping them move along the correct path.
Here's one for you. This rhymes, and this is a cracking one. Question to the panel and to everyone: why do we need processes?
Right, I would say that if a process defines what we're doing, so therefore, if you want to do it again, then you need a process. If you're happy with having a stab at it each time and guessing,
winging it,
winging it. Even your grandmother's special recipe it's a process that was handed down by the generations. Yes, it's changed and the ingredients have changed, but it's still got a process behind it. So I think it's the repeatability and reliability and the ability to troubleshoot. If it doesn't come out the way you wanted it to, then what went wrong?
What needs to be changed in the process?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, when I look at it, because it's to ensure that the customer gets what they asked for at the right specification, and you can have all the normal shit you come out with right quality, right time, right place, whatever. But we want the right quality, we want the right specification, we need the processes, and we don't need any deviation from it. For me, but it's always the customer that's is to deliver that specification to the customer. All right. Repeatability, robustness, whatever you want to call it.
I think we are faced with the thing with processes and repeatability. I think processes are important even when they go wrong, because if it went wrong, you need to know not to do that again, and you don't know what you did. You actually can't avoid it, because very often you'll do a thing based on intuition, and if you don't know why you did it the second time around, you might repeat the exact same mistakes. But there really is a tricky balance between knowing when to adapt and when to stick, because if you do something a long time, you say, well, this is a dead end, this is not a dead end. And I think that it's not that easy to tell whether you should hold, whether you should fold or hold sometimes. And obviously that's why we need external helpers sometimes to help us have a fresh pair of eyes who have seen other examples of a similar sort of thing to help short circuit that a little bit.
Aren't we lucky that penicillin was something that went wrong?
Yes.
I know Luke has just asked a question. He's saying, where is it? Who should build these processes, make these processes, which I think you answered early on, Peter, but I don't know whether you want to reiterate.
Yeah, I would say that really the people who know their product and understand how the equipment works or how the process works best should be the ones to create it. And it might be something that's been collated over a period of time. But if you are actually going to document, then it's a question of getting all the information together, and you can store that information so it is then repeatable at a later stage.
But those people might not be the people who actually do the documentation. They know the process, but they might need some help in documenting it and reporting it in the correct format so it can be usable and repeatable. But they are definitely people to give you the information to do it, but not necessarily people to solely on their own create the final process.
Yeah.
Rob
They're
just
not people using it.
Sorry, Peter. It was just Rob's put a great one in as well. It just made me giggle, but it's so true. It's saying creative process will require people from all those departments affected by it and a 5-year-old. Why the 5-year-old, you ask? To ask those questions all of us might consider not obvious.
Yeah,
it's true. That is true for me.
How many times have we been in a meeting where you think no one's asking a question? I don't know this. So you say you ask that question, you see everyone else saying, "Oh, thank goodness, someone's asking."
Yeah.
So ask the stupid questions. Then people don't expect too much of you.
Set your baseline.
So Peter, can you sum up for us, a sentence or two?
Right. Well, as MAT, we're basically looking to help smaller manufacturers to sort of analyze and improve their processes, starting off using their equipment and people and building up their skills before they start investing in things outside. And we've got lots of opportunity with the global market to do that. We are also, as a sort of sideline, running a workshop called manufacturing.support, which manufacturers can come along for no charge, and they can air their problems and ask for any bits of help. And we have a panel of experts in different areas that can give them a hint to go to sort of identify how they can overcome it. So there's two things. One is where we're contractually helping people to sort out a project. The other one is sort of like a lightweight. It's not promoting MAT. It's just promoting manufacturers.
Sounds good.
Sorry, Andrew. Where can we find that, Peter, by the way?
Okay, the company is. We can find us on the web is matl.co.uk, and you can either get hold of us through Matt or myself on LinkedIn, or we have a workshop website which is called manufacturing.support. Nice and easy. It does exactly what it says on the tin.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. So I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us. And of course, thank you to all of those who commented and asked questions. If you'd like to know a bit more about the fabulous work that ConeX Portal is doing and how it's helping SMEs in UK manufacturing, then please do contact either Sam Bainham or myself. We'd be happy to have a chat with you. And also, obviously, go and check out what Peter and Francis are doing. Thank you again. Thank you, Adam, for steering the ship once more, and hopefully we'll see you all on Thursday when we'll be talking to Luke Appleby. See you all then.
Take care all.
Stay safe.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.